My brother Derek spent 5 years telling everyone I was wasting my life behind a desk while he built something real with the family construction company. Last Tuesday, I walked into a board meeting where he was pitching himself as the next CEO and watched his face drain of color when the chairman introduced me as the new majority shareholder. But how does a supposedly mediocre office worker quietly acquire control of a $60 million company without anyone noticing? I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from, and if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. The fluorescent lights in my cubicle at Henderson and Price flickered the same way they had for the past 7 years. March of 2016. I was 29 years old, and according to my younger brother Derek, I was the family disappointment. Grace, you're still doing data entry? Derek's voice carried that particular blend of pity and contempt he'd perfected over the years. We were at Mom's house for Sunday dinner, and he'd cornered me in the kitchen while I was refilling my water glass. I mean, when are you going to do something with your life? I'd heard variations of this speech dozens of times. Derek was 26 then, 3 years younger than me, but he carried himself like he'd already conquered the world. In his mind, maybe he had. After graduating from Arizona State with a business degree, he'd joined our uncle's construction firm, Lopez Brothers Development, and quickly made himself indispensable. Or so he claimed. "I'm doing fine, Derek," I said, keeping my voice neutral. This was easier than arguing. "Fine," he snorted. "Grace, I just closed a $2.3 million contract for the Riverside Plaza project. You know what that means? Real money. Real impact. You're pushing papers for some accounting firm, making what, 40 grand a year?" 42, I corrected automatically. "Oh, wow, 42. He grabbed a beer from the fridge. "Look, I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm just saying you're smart. You could have done something. Instead, you're just there. Every day. Same desk, same nothing." I watched condensation form on my water glass. Derek didn't know that data entry was what I told the family because it was simpler than explaining my actual job. I was a junior analyst at Henderson and Price, one of the premier forensic accounting firms in Phoenix. We specialized in corporate investigations, fraud detection, and financial due diligence for high-stakes acquisitions. The work was meticulous, complex, and required absolute discretion. But telling Derek that would have invited more questions, more mockery about how I thought I was special because I analyzed spreadsheets instead of just entering numbers. So I'd let him believe his version. It was easier. "Derek, leave your sister alone," Mom called from the dining room. "Grace works hard." "I know she works hard, Ma. That's not the point." Derek leaned against the counter, warming to his theme. "The point is, hard work without ambition is just treading water. I've got ambition. Uncle Ramon sees it. He's already talking about making me a partner in 5 years. Maybe sooner." Uncle Ramon Lopez had built Lopez Brothers Development from a 2-man operation into a major player in commercial construction across Arizona and New Mexico. He'd started the company with our father, his older brother, back in 1991. Then Dad died in a construction accident in 2003, when I was 16 and Derek was 13. Uncle Ramon bought out Dad's share from Mom and promised to take care of us. He'd paid for Derek's college, gave him a job, mentored him. I got a partial scholarship to Arizona State and worked 3 jobs to cover the rest. Uncle Ramon's generosity apparently had limits. "That's great, Derek. I'm happy for you." "Are you, though?" He studied me with those dark eyes that used to be warm when we were kids, before competition replaced companionship. "Because it seems like you're just coasting, Grace. No boyfriend, no career trajectory, no big goals, just your little cubicle and your little life." The words stung more than I wanted to admit. Not because they were true, they weren't, but because they came from Derek. We used to be close. After Dad died, we'd clung to each other. But somewhere along the way, Derek had decided that life was a competition, and he needed to win it by making sure I was losing. I went back to the dining room without responding. That Sunday dinner was in March of 2016. I remember the date precisely because it was exactly 1 week before everything changed. The following Monday, my supervisor at Henderson and Price, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Vance, called me into her office. "Grace, I'm putting you on a new case. It's sensitive, and it's going to require your complete discretion." Patricia slid a thin folder across her desk. "The client is Meridian Capital Group. They're considering a major investment in a regional construction firm, but they've got concerns about the company's financials. Numbers aren't adding up." I opened the folder. The company name made my stomach drop. Lopez Brothers Development. "I need you to do a full forensic analysis," Patricia continued. "Review all financial records, contracts, expense reports, corporate structure, everything. Meridian is talking about a $15 million investment for 40% equity, but they want to know exactly what they're buying." I stared at the company logo on the letterhead. My father's company. My uncle's company. Derek's future. "Is there a problem?" Patricia asked. Professional ethics warred with personal connection, but Henderson and Price had strict protocols. If I had a conflict of interest, I needed to disclose it immediately. The case would go to another analyst, and that would be that. Except I'd spent 13 years watching Uncle Ramon treat me like an afterthought while elevating Derek. I'd spent years listening to Derek mock my choices while coasting on advantages he didn't acknowledge. And something in Patricia's tone, "numbers aren't adding up," triggered every investigative instinct I'd honed over 7 years in forensic accounting. "No problem," I said. "When do I start?" "Today. You'll have full access to their files by Wednesday. Meridian wants a preliminary report in 6 weeks." I took the folder back to my desk, my supposedly meaningless cubicle, and opened it. Inside were bank statements, tax returns, and corporate filings for Lopez Brothers Development. Even a cursory glance showed red flags: cash flow irregularities, unexplained expenses, contracts with vendors I'd never heard of. Either Uncle Ramon was terrible at bookkeeping or something else was going on. Over the next 2 weeks, I buried myself in the investigation. Meridian Capital had given me access to everything: 5 years of financial records, emails, internal memos, vendor contracts, employee files. I worked late every night, building spreadsheets, tracking money flows, cross-referencing expenses. The picture that emerged was damning. Uncle Ramon had been siphoning money from Lopez Brothers for years. Fake vendors that were actually shell companies he controlled. Inflated material costs with kickbacks going to his personal accounts. Project budgets padded with phantom expenses. He'd stolen at least $3 million from his own company over the past 4 years. Worse, he'd been using Derek as cover. Derek's name was on dozens of contracts and purchase orders, his signature authorizing payments that went to Ramon's shell companies. Whether Derek knew or not, he was implicated in the fraud. I sat in my cubicle at 11 p.m. on a Thursday night, staring at the evidence I'd compiled. My uncle was a criminal. My brother was either a co-conspirator or a useful idiot. The company that bore my father's name had been corrupted into a vehicle for theft, and I was the only one who knew. The next Sunday, Derek showed up at Mom's house driving a new BMW. "Just upgraded," he said, grinning as I got out of my 8-year-old Honda Civic. "Company bonus. Uncle Ramon says I'm exceeding expectations." I looked at the car, $60,000 minimum, and wondered which fake vendor had paid for it. "That's great, Derek." "Yeah, well," he shrugged with false modesty. "I'm putting in the work, unlike some people." At dinner, he regaled Mom with stories about job sites and client meetings, about how Uncle Ramon was grooming him for leadership. Mom beamed with pride. Uncle Ramon, who joined us for dinner, clapped Derek on the shoulder and called him the future of Lopez Brothers. Nobody asked me about my week. I went home that night and finished my report for Meridian Capital. It was 73 pages long, with 216 exhibits documenting the fraud. I recommended they withdraw their investment offer immediately and consider reporting their findings to federal authorities. Patricia called me into her office 3 days later. "Grace, this is exceptional work." She set my report down with a heavy thud. "Meridian is furious. They almost walked into a disaster, but they're also impressed with the thoroughness of your analysis. Thank you. They want to meet with you directly. They have questions about the findings, and they want to discuss next steps. Patricia leaned back in her chair. Grace, this could be a career-defining case for you. Meridian is a major client. If you handle this well, there will be opportunities. The meeting with Meridian Capital was scheduled for the following Tuesday at their offices in downtown Phoenix. I wore my best suit, the one I'd bought for interviews 3 years ago, and took the elevator to the 42nd floor of the Meridian Tower. The reception area had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. I could see all of Phoenix spread out below, including the Lopez brothers' construction sites scattered across the valley. Ms. Lopez, a woman in her 50s approached, extending her hand. I'm Caroline Fletcher, Senior Vice President at Meridian Capital. Thank you for coming. She led me to a conference room where 2 men were waiting. The older one, probably 60, with silver hair and a custom suit, stood up first. Grace Lopez, I'm Richard Ashford, Managing Partner at Meridian Capital. His handshake was firm. Your report was outstanding. Saved us from making a catastrophically expensive mistake. I'm glad I could help. Help? The younger man, mid-40s, athletic build, expensive watch, laughed. You did more than help. I'm Thomas Brennan, Head of Acquisitions. We've been looking at Lopez Brothers for 8 months. Never suspected fraud at this level. We sat down, and for the next hour, they walked through my findings, asking detailed questions about the shell companies, the money flows, the timeline of the fraud. I'd anticipated every question. My answers were precise, documented, and irrefutable. Finally, Richard Ashford leaned back in his chair. Ms. Lopez, we're impressed. Not just with your technical skills, but with your judgment under what I imagine were complicated circumstances. He paused. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. I assume you know the principals involved in this case. Ramon Lopez is my uncle, Derek Lopez is my brother. And yet your analysis was completely objective. That takes integrity. Richard exchanged glances with Caroline and Thomas. We're withdrawing our investment offer, obviously, but we still see potential in the underlying business if the fraud can be removed and proper management installed. That makes sense, I said carefully. We're prepared to make a different kind of offer. Richard opened a folder. Meridian Capital will acquire Lopez Brothers Development for $8 million, well below our original valuation, accounting for the fraud liability. We'll clean house, bring in new management, and restructure the operation. The company your father built could still thrive under proper leadership. $8 million. For a company Uncle Ramon had valued at $38 million in his pitch to Meridian. Who would you bring in to run it? I asked. Richard smiled. That's what we wanted to discuss with you. The conference room went quiet. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the afternoon sun casting long shadows across downtown Phoenix. Somewhere out there, Derek was probably on a job site, completely unaware that the empire he thought he'd inherit was crumbling in a conference room on the 42nd floor. Me? I managed to keep my voice steady. You want me to run Lopez Brothers? Caroline Fletcher leaned forward, her expression serious. Not exactly. Let me explain what we're proposing, and then you can decide if it's something you'd consider. Thomas Brennan pulled up a presentation on the screen behind him. The first slide showed the corporate structure of Lopez Brothers Development, a tangled web of ownership percentages and subsidiary companies. Current situation, Thomas began. Ramon Lopez owns 68% of the company. The remaining 32% is divided among 4 silent investors who bought in during the expansion phase back in 2012. None of them are involved in day-to-day operations. They receive quarterly dividends and attend the annual shareholder meeting, but that's it. Richard picked up the thread. We've contacted all 4 investors privately. Once we showed them your forensic report, they were eager to sell. Nobody wants to be associated with fraud, and nobody wants potential legal liability. We can acquire their 32% for $2 million total. They're actually grateful for the exit opportunity. I did the math quickly. That still leaves Ramon with controlling interest. Correct. Which is where the second phase comes in. Caroline clicked to the next slide. Once the fraud becomes public, and it will become public, Ramon Lopez will face criminal charges. Wire fraud, tax evasion, possibly racketeering given the interstate nature of some contracts. He'll be desperate to raise money for legal defense and to avoid total financial ruin. You think he'll sell his shares? We know he will. We've already had preliminary conversations through intermediaries. He doesn't know we're the interested party yet, but he's indicated he'd sell his controlling stake for $6 million if the right buyer came along. That's less than 20% of what he claimed the company was worth, but it's enough to hire top lawyers and maybe keep his house. Thomas advanced to the next slide, which showed a new corporate structure. Here's what we're proposing. Meridian Capital will create a special purpose acquisition vehicle, essentially a holding company, to purchase all 98% of Lopez Brothers. Total cost, $8 million. I stared at the organizational chart. The holding company was labeled Summit Ventures, LLC. The interesting part, Richard continued, is the ownership structure of Summit Ventures itself. Meridian Capital will hold 49%. The remaining 51%, the majority stake, will be held by an individual investor. He looked directly at me. You're offering me majority ownership of the company? We're offering you the opportunity to acquire it, yes, but let's be clear about what that means. Caroline pulled out a detailed term sheet. You'd need to invest $1.2 million for your 51% stake in Summit Ventures. That gives you controlling interest in the holding company, which in turn owns Lopez Brothers. $1.2 million. I made $73,000 a year at Henderson & Price. I had maybe $45,000 in savings. I didn't own property. My car was paid off, but it was worth perhaps $6,000 on a good day. I don't have that kind of capital, I said. We know, which is why we're prepared to structure this as a leveraged buyout. Richard slid another document across the table. Meridian will loan you the $1.2 million at 3% interest over 10 years. Your monthly payment would be approximately $11,500. I almost laughed. That's more than my monthly salary. It would be if you were still working at Henderson & Price. Thomas grinned. But you wouldn't be. You'd be CEO of Lopez Brothers Development, drawing a salary commensurate with that position. We're proposing $180,000 annually to start, plus performance bonuses tied to company profitability. The numbers were dizzying. CEO, $180,000. Majority owner. Why me? I asked. You could bring in an experienced construction executive, someone who actually knows the industry. We could, Richard agreed. But here's what we've learned in 30 years of acquisitions. Technical expertise can be hired. Integrity can't. You had every reason to look the other way when you discovered fraud in your own family's company. Instead, you documented it meticulously and reported it completely. That's the kind of person we want in leadership. Plus, Caroline added, you understand the company better than any outsider ever could. You grew up around this business. Your father was a founder. You've watched it operate your entire life. That institutional knowledge is valuable. And frankly, Thomas said, there's a strategic advantage to having a Lopez in charge when we clean house. Clients, vendors, employees, they'll see continuity, not hostile takeover. The Lopez Brothers brand has value. You can preserve what your father built while eliminating what your uncle corrupted. I looked down at the term sheet. The numbers blurred slightly. This was insane. This was impossible. This was exactly what I'd been working toward my entire life without knowing it. What about Derek? The question came out before I could stop it. Richard's expression hardened. Your brother's involvement in the fraud is unclear. His signatures are on dozens of questionable documents, but we can't determine if he knew what he was signing or if Ramon manipulated him. Either way, he'd be terminated immediately upon acquisition completion. He thinks he's going to inherit the company, I said quietly. Uncle Ramon has been promising him a partnership. Ramon Lopez has been promising a lot of things he can't deliver. Caroline's tone was matter-of-fact. The partnership agreement your brother signed is worthless. It's contingent on company performance targets that were only met through fraudulent accounting. Once the real numbers come out, that agreement is void. Thomas pulled up a timeline on the screen. Here's how this would unfold. Today is April 9th, 2016. We need your decision by April 15th. If you agree, we'll finalize the loan documentation and begin the acquisition process. We'll purchase the minority shareholders' stakes immediately. That takes about 2 weeks. Then we'll approach Ramon with our offer. Given his legal situation, we expect him to accept within days. The entire acquisition could close by mid-May, Richard said. You'd be installed as CEO by June 1st. We'd conduct a full operational audit, terminate anyone involved in the fraud, bring in new financial controls, and restructure the company properly. What about the board of directors? I asked, starting to think through the practical implications. Good question. Current board is Ramon, Derek, and 2 of the minority investors who are selling out. Once we acquire the company, we'll reconstitute the board with 5 members. You as CEO and chairman, 2 representatives from Meridian, and 2 independent directors will recruit jointly. You'll have the deciding vote on all major decisions. Caroline handed me another document. This is a preliminary operating agreement for Summit Ventures. It specifies your authority as majority owner, Meridian's rights as minority investor, and the governance structure. I'd encourage you to have your own attorney review everything before signing. My own attorney. I didn't have an attorney. I'd never needed one. How long do I have to decide? 6 days. We need to move quickly once Ramon's legal problems become public knowledge. The window for acquisition at favorable terms is narrow. Richard stood up, signaling the meeting was ending. Grace, I want to be direct with you. This is a significant risk. You'd be taking on substantial debt to buy a company that's been criminally mismanaged. The construction industry is cyclical and competitive. There are no guarantees of success. Then why are you offering this to me? He smiled. Because Meridian doesn't make the loan unless you take the ownership stake. We believe in you more than you might believe in yourself right now. We think you can turn Lopez Brothers into something your father would be proud of. But ultimately, you have to decide if you believe it too. They walked me to the elevator. I rode down 42 floors in a daze, the term sheet and operating agreement heavy in my briefcase. When I got to my car, I sat in the driver's seat for 20 minutes, just staring at the steering wheel. CEO, majority owner, $180,000 a year. Debt, risk, responsibility. Derek's face when he found out. I drove home to my apartment in Tempe, a 1-bedroom place I'd rented for 5 years, with builder-grade everything and a view of the parking lot. I made tea and spread the documents across my small dining table. The operating agreement was 53 pages long. I read every word. Meridian Capital's terms were clear. They'd provide the financing, the operational support, and the industry connections. But I'd have final decision-making authority. I could hire and fire. I could choose which projects to bid on. I could rebuild the company culture from the ground up. I could also fail spectacularly, default on a $1 million loan, and destroy what was left of my father's legacy. My phone buzzed. A text from Derek. Sunday dinner at Ma's. Uncle Ramon wants to make announcement. Be there. I stared at the message. What announcement? Another promotion for Derek, another milestone in his inevitable rise. I thought about Sunday dinners for the past 13 years, sitting quietly while Derek and Uncle Ramon talked about projects and profits, Mom beaming with pride at Derek's success, the careful way they never quite asked about my job, because they'd decided it wasn't worth discussing, the way I'd accepted that narrative, the way I'd made myself smaller to avoid conflict. I picked up my phone and called Patricia Vance. Grace, it's after 8. Is everything okay? I need to talk to you about something. Can we meet tomorrow morning before work? Of course. My office, 7 a.m.? I'll be there. We met at a coffee shop instead, somewhere neutral where we could talk freely. I told Patricia everything. The Meridian proposal, the ownership opportunity, the loan structure, the impossible decision I had to make in 6 days. She listened without interrupting, her coffee growing cold while I talked. So they want you to become CEO of the company you just proved is fraudulent, she said finally. That's either brilliant or insane. I can't tell which. Grace, let me ask you something. Why did you become a forensic accountant? The question surprised me. I'm good with numbers. I like solving puzzles. That's not an answer. Plenty of careers involve numbers and puzzles. Patricia leaned forward. I've supervised you for 4 years. You're not just good at this work, you're passionate about it. You care about finding the truth, especially when someone's trying to hide it. You care about justice, about making things right. I suppose that's true. This is your chance to do that on a scale you've never imagined. Not just documenting fraud after the fact, but actually fixing what's broken, rebuilding something that was corrupted, making things right. She paused. It's also terrifying, and there's no guarantee of success. But I've never seen you back away from something because it was hard. This is different. This is my family. I know, which is why you're the only person who can do it. Patricia finished her cold coffee. Whatever you decide, you have my support. If you take this opportunity, Henderson and Price will be sorry to lose you, but I'll write you the best reference letter you've ever seen. If you don't take it, that's okay too. You'll keep doing exceptional work here. I went to work that day but couldn't focus. I ran financial models in my head, calculating break-even points, projecting cash flows, estimating the revenue needed to cover my loan payments and draw a salary. The math actually worked. Lopez brothers had good bones, solid client relationships, experienced crews, a reputation for quality work. If the fraud was removed and proper management installed, the company could be profitable, maybe even very profitable. Thursday night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my father. He'd started Lopez Brothers with Uncle Ramon 34 years ago, when I was -1 year old. They'd built it from nothing, working 18-hour days, taking risks, believing they could create something lasting. Dad died in 2003 when a crane collapsed on a job site in Scottsdale. I was 16. I remembered Uncle Ramon at the funeral, promising Mom he'd take care of us, promising to honor Dad's legacy, promising the company would always be a Lopez family business. He'd kept that last promise, technically. It was still a Lopez family business. It was just that he'd been stealing from it for over a decade. Friday morning, I called Richard Ashford. Grace, have you made your decision? I have questions first. If I do this, I'll need guarantees about several things. I'm listening. For the next hour, I negotiated. I wanted operational independence. Meridian could advise, but couldn't override my decisions. I wanted clear performance metrics that determined my compensation and the loan terms. I wanted protection for employees who weren't involved in the fraud. I wanted control over who got hired and fired. Richard agreed to everything. One more thing, I said. I want to be in the room when you make the offer to Ramon Lopez. I want to see his face when he realizes what's happening. There was a long pause. That's unconventional, and possibly unwise. It's non-negotiable. Another pause, then, all right, we'll arrange it. Do we have a deal, Grace? Looked around my apartment, my tiny kitchen with the cheap appliances, my secondhand furniture, my carefully budgeted life that had seemed sufficient until someone showed me there was another path. We have a deal. Excellent. I'll have our lawyers draw up the final documentation. Plan to come to our offices Monday morning at 9 a.m. to sign everything. And Grace? Yes? Welcome to the construction business. I hung up and sat very still, my heart pounding. I'd just agreed to buy my family's company out from under them. Sunday dinner was at 5 p.m. I arrived 15 minutes early, my stomach in knots. Mom was in the kitchen, making tamales the way she'd done every Sunday for as long as I could remember. Grace, come help me with these. I fell into the familiar rhythm, spreading masa, adding filling, folding corn husks. Mom hummed while she worked, content in her element. Your uncle seems excited about tonight, she said. He said he has big news about Derek. Did he say what? No, but I think it's the partnership. Finally making it official. She smiled. Your father would be so proud. Derek's carrying on the Lopez name in the business. I focused on folding the tamale in my hands, not trusting myself to speak. Derek arrived in his BMW, with Uncle Ramon right behind him in a black Mercedes. They came in together, laughing about something, looking like the picture of success. "Grace!" Uncle Ramon hugged me the way he always did, warm and paternal, the perfect imitation of someone who cared. "Good to see you, mija. How's the office job?" "Fine, Uncle Ramon. Still doing that accounting work? We could always use someone in our office. Better pay than wherever you're working now." Derek smirked. "She likes her cubicle, Uncle Ramon. Leave her alone." We sat down for dinner. Mom brought out the tamales, rice, beans, salad. Uncle Ramon said grace, thanking God for family and prosperity. I ate mechanically, waiting for the announcement. Finally, over dessert, Uncle Ramon tapped his wine glass. "I wanted you all here tonight because I have something important to share." He put his hand on Derek's shoulder. 25 years ago, my brother Miguel and I started Lopez Brothers with nothing but a pickup truck and a dream. Miguel didn't get to see how far we'd come, but I know he'd be proud of what we've built. And I know he'd be especially proud of his son. Derek sat up straighter, anticipation written all over his face. "Derek, you've proven yourself over the past 5 years. Your work ethic, your business sense, your dedication to the company, it's everything I could have hoped for. So I'm officially offering you a junior partnership, 10% equity in Lopez Brothers development, effective immediately." Mom gasped with delight. Derek's face lit up like he'd won the lottery. "Uncle Ramon, I don't know what to say. Thank you. I won't let you down." "I know you won't, son." Uncle Ramon raised his glass. "To the future of Lopez Brothers!" We all raised our glasses. I drank, the wine bitter on my tongue. 10% equity. In a company that wouldn't exist in its current form in 6 weeks. After dinner, I helped Mom clean up while Derek and Uncle Ramon sat in the living room, planning Derek's future. I could hear fragments of their conversation, talk of new projects, expansion plans, eventually making Derek CEO when Uncle Ramon retired. All of it built on fraud, all of it about to collapse. I drove home that night, wondering if I was making the biggest mistake of my life or the best decision I'd ever made. Monday morning, I walked into Meridian Capital's offices at 8:55 a.m., wearing the same suit I'd worn to my first meeting with them. Richard Ashford, Caroline Fletcher, and Thomas Brennan were waiting, along with 2 attorneys I hadn't met before. "Grace, this is David Park and Jennifer Walsh from our legal team. They'll walk you through the documents." For the next 2 hours, I signed my name more times than I could count. Loan agreements, operating agreements, purchase contracts, non-disclosure agreements, employment contracts. With each signature, the weight of what I was doing became more real. By 11:30 a.m., it was done. I was the majority owner of Summit Ventures LLC, which was in the process of acquiring Lopez Brothers Development. I was also $1.2 million in debt. "Congratulations," Richard said, shaking my hand. "You're now in the construction business." "When do you approach Ramon?" "This afternoon. We have a meeting scheduled for 2 p.m. He thinks it's with a potential investor interested in expanding operations into California." Richard's expression was grim. "Would you like to be there?" I thought about Uncle Ramon's toast the night before, to the future of Lopez Brothers. Yes, I would. The conference room on the 38th floor of the Meridian Tower had a different energy than the one where I'd signed my documents that morning. This room was designed for intimidation. Dark wood paneling, leather chairs, a massive table that could seat 20 people. Only 6 chairs were occupied. Richard Ashford sat at the head of the table. Caroline Fletcher and Thomas Brennan flanked him on one side. I sat on the other side, partially hidden behind Thomas. We'd agreed I'd stay quiet and observe unless directly addressed. 2 empty chairs waited at the far end. "He'll try to negotiate," Richard had warned me during lunch. "Ramon Lopez didn't build a successful company by accepting first offers. He'll push back, ask for more money, try to maintain some control. We need to be prepared for that." "What's your walkaway number?" I'd asked. $7 million, but we won't go there unless we have to. The fraud exposure gives us leverage. At 1:58 p.m., Richard's assistant opened the door. Mr. Lopez is here. Uncle Ramon walked in wearing an expensive charcoal suit, his silver hair perfectly styled, his smile confident. He looked like success personified. Behind him came someone I didn't recognize, a thin man in his 40s carrying a leather portfolio. Richard Ashford, I presume? Uncle Ramon extended his hand. Ramon Lopez, this is my attorney, Kenneth Whitmore. They shook hands. Ramon's gaze swept the room, pausing briefly on me before moving on. He didn't recognize me. Or more likely, he saw a young woman in a business suit and assumed I was an assistant, not worth his attention. Please, have a seat. Richard gestured to the empty chairs. Thank you for coming on short notice. I know you're a busy man. Always happy to meet with serious investors. Ramon settled into his chair with the ease of someone who'd attended 1,000 such meetings. Your call intrigued me. Expansion into California is something I've been considering for years. Actually, Mr. Lopez, that's not quite why we asked you here. Richard's tone remained pleasant, but something in it made Ramon's smile falter slightly. We need to discuss the financial health of Lopez Brothers Development. The company is performing exceptionally well. Our quarterly reports are fraudulent. Caroline opened a folder and slid a document across the table. This is a forensic audit conducted by one of the premier accounting firms in Phoenix. It details systematic fraud spanning at least 4 years, totaling approximately $3.2 million. The color drained from Ramon's face. His attorney, Kenneth Whitmore, grabbed the document and began scanning it rapidly. I don't know what you're talking about. Who conducted this audit? On what authority? On the authority of Meridian Capital, acting on behalf of the minority shareholders of Lopez Brothers Development. Thomas Brennan opened his own folder. We've spent the last 3 weeks conducting due diligence on your company for a potential investment. What we found was extensive evidence of shell companies, inflated invoices, and misappropriation of corporate funds. Ramon's jaw clenched. This is absurd. My company has been audited annually. We've passed every inspection, every regulatory review. Your auditor is Simmons & Grant, a small firm in Mesa with exactly 3 clients. Caroline's voice was clinical. They charge you $12,000 annually for an audit that should cost $75,000. Either they're incompetent or they're complicit. Either way, their work wouldn't survive federal scrutiny. Kenneth Whitmore was speed-reading the forensic report, his expression growing grimmer with each page. Ramon noticed. Kenneth? We need to talk. Privately. No. Ramon's hands were flat on the table. Whatever you have to say it here. I have nothing to hide. Mr. Lopez, Richard leaned forward, his voice almost gentle. We're not here to destroy you. We're here to make you an offer. You're facing serious legal exposure. Wire fraud carries a 20-year maximum sentence. Tax evasion adds another 5 years. The interstate nature of some of these transactions potentially brings in RICO statutes. You're threatening me. We're informing you of the reality of your situation. Caroline pulled out another document. But we're prepared to offer you a way out. Meridian Capital will purchase your 68% stake in Lopez Brothers Development for $6 million. That's enough to secure excellent legal representation and settle any civil claims that might arise. $6 million. Ramon had spent Sunday night telling Derek the company was worth $40 million. You're trying to steal my company. We're offering you market value for a company that's under criminal investigation. Thomas's tone hardened. Once this fraud becomes public, and it will become public, Lopez Brothers will be worthless. Clients will flee. Bonding companies will drop you. Banks will freeze your lines of credit. $6 million is generous under the circumstances. Ramon stood abruptly. Get out. This meeting is over. Mr. Lopez, Kenneth started. I said get out. You come in here with your accusations and your threats, thinking you can intimidate me into selling the company I built. Ramon's face was flushed with anger. I've been building in the state for 34 years. I have relationships, I have lawyers, I have friends in every regulatory agency in Arizona. You think you can just walk in here and take what's mine? It's not yours. The words came out before I could stop them. Everyone turned to look at me. Ramon's eyes narrowed. Who are you? I stood up, my heart hammering. You don't recognize me, Uncle Ramon. I'm hurt. We just had dinner together 2 nights ago. The recognition hit him like a physical blow. Grace? Surprised to see me here? I walked around the table, coming closer to where he stood. I'm the one who conducted the forensic audit. I'm the one who found every fake vendor, every inflated invoice, every dollar you stole from the company my father built. You did this? His voice was barely a whisper. I did my job. I'm a forensic accountant at Henderson and Price. Have been for 7 years. Not data entry, Uncle Ramon. Fraud investigation. And you gave me a masterclass in what fraud looks like. Kenneth Whitmore's face had gone pale. Mr. Lopez, we need to leave. Now. But Ramon wasn't listening. He was staring at me like I'd betrayed him, like I was the villain in the story. I took care of your family after Miguel died. I gave your mother money. I paid for Derek's education. I offered you jobs. You bought out my father's share of the company for $200,000 when it was worth 10 times that. You told my mother it was fair market value. She believed you because she trusted you. My voice was steady now, all the years of quiet resentment crystallizing into cold clarity. You paid for Derek's education because he was useful to you. You offered me jobs because you wanted to keep me close enough to monitor, but not close enough to see what you were doing. I built this company. You and my father built it. Then you corrupted it. You turned it into your personal bank account, and you used Derek's signature to cover your tracks. At the mention of Derek's name, Ramon's expression changed. Derek had nothing to do with this. His name is on 63 fraudulent documents. His signature authorized payments to shell companies you control. Whether he knew or not, he's implicated. He didn't know. Derek is innocent. That's for investigators to determine. Richard stood up. Mr. Lopez, you have 48 hours to accept our offer. $6 million for your controlling stake. After that, we go to federal authorities with the forensic report, and you'll be lucky to avoid prison, much less keep any money. Why are you doing this? Ramon looked at me, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. Why would you destroy your own family? I'm saving what's left of it. The company Dad built deserves better than what you made it into. And you think you can run it? You don't know the first thing about construction, about managing crews, about bidding jobs. I'll learn. I've got good teachers lined up. I gestured to Richard and Caroline. Plus, I won't be stealing from the company, which should improve the profit margins considerably. The realization hit Ramon like a freight train. You're buying the company. You're the investor. Majority owner, actually. 51% through Summit Ventures, LLC. Meridian Capital holds the remaining 49%. I let that sink in. Once we acquire your shares and the minority stakes, I'll be installed as CEO. You'll have no position, no authority, and no future with Lopez Brothers Development. Kenneth Whitmore grabbed Ramon's arm. We're leaving. Don't say another word. But Ramon jerked away from him, advancing on me. You ungrateful little... Thomas Brennan stepped between us, his hand raised. Mr. Lopez, I'd advise you to step back. 34 years, Ramon's voice cracked. I gave 34 years to that company. I worked 70-hour weeks. I missed birthdays and anniversaries. I sacrificed everything. While stealing $3 million, Caroline's voice cut through his rant. Let's not pretend you were some kind of martyr. Mr. Lopez, we're done here. Kenneth physically pulled Ramon toward the door. Not another word. We'll review the offer with our own counsel and respond within the deadline. Ramon allowed himself to be led to the door, but he stopped at the threshold, looking back at me. Your father would be ashamed of you. The words were designed to hurt, to make me doubt. But I'd spent too many nights thinking about Dad, about what he'd built and what Ramon had twisted it into. "No," I said quietly. "He'd be ashamed of you, and he'd be proud that someone finally stopped you." The door closed behind them. I sat down heavily, my legs suddenly shaky. The adrenaline that had carried me through the confrontation was draining away, leaving me trembling. "Grace," Richard's hand was on my shoulder. "Are you all right? I just destroyed my relationship with my uncle and probably my brother. My mother is going to hate me when she finds out. Sunday dinners are going to be awkward for the next decade." I laughed, but it came out choked. "Yeah, I'm great." Caroline poured water from the pitcher on the table and handed me a glass. "What you did took courage, more courage than most people have." It took anger. I drank the water, trying to steady myself. "I've spent 13 years watching him treat me like I didn't matter, watching Derek buy into his version of success. I just wanted him to know that I mattered, that I wasn't just someone to be dismissed." "Well, you certainly accomplished that." Thomas was grinning. "The look on his face when you revealed yourself, that was priceless." "You think he'll take the offer?" Richard sat down across from me. "His attorney will tell him to take it. Kenneth Whitmore is smart enough to know that $6 million and a chance to avoid prison is better than nothing and a guaranteed indictment. Ramon will fight it for a day or two, try to bluster and negotiate, but ultimately he'll take it. And if he doesn't, then we proceed with Plan B. We acquire the minority shares, we take the forensic report to the FBI, and we wait for Ramon to be arrested. His shares will be frozen as criminal assets, and we'll acquire them at bankruptcy prices through a federal auction." Caroline's expression was matter-of-fact. "It's messier, takes longer, but it ends the same way. You become CEO, he goes to prison." I set down the water glass. "What about Derek?" The question hung in the air. Richard and Caroline exchanged glances. "Derek's situation is complicated," Richard finally said. "He signed documents authorizing fraudulent payments, but there's no evidence he knew they were fraudulent. He could claim he trusted Ramon and signed whatever was put in front of him. Most prosecutors wouldn't pursue charges against someone in that position unless they could prove intent. So he walks away. From criminal charges, probably, from Lopez brothers." Richard shook his head. "No, when we take over, he'll be terminated immediately. His partnership agreement will be voided. He'll have no position, no equity, nothing." I thought about Derek's face at Sunday dinner, his excitement about the partnership, his absolute certainty that he was on the path to running the company. "He's going to blame me." "Yes," Caroline said simply. "He will. People often blame the messenger rather than accepting responsibility for their own choices. Derek chose to align himself with Ramon. He chose not to ask questions about what he was signing. He chose to mock your career while coasting on advantages he didn't earn. Those were his choices. Doesn't make it easier." "No, it doesn't." Richard stood up, closing his folders. "Grace, you need to prepare yourself. The next few weeks are going to be difficult. Ramon will try to poison Derek and your mother against you. He'll tell them you betrayed the family, that you stole the company out of greed, that you're working with corporate raiders who are destroying the Lopez legacy. Some of it will stick. I know. You'll be isolated from your family at exactly the moment when you're taking on one of the most challenging professional responsibilities of your life. It's going to be hard." I stood up too, smoothing my suit jacket. "I didn't go into forensic accounting because I wanted easy. I did it because I wanted to make things right. This is me making things right." Thomas walked me to the elevator. "We'll be in touch tomorrow once we hear from Ramon's attorney. In the meantime, try to get some rest. This weekend is probably the last peace you'll have for a while." The elevator ride down felt longer than the ride up had that morning. So much had changed in a single day. This morning, I was Grace Lopez, junior analyst. Now I was Grace Lopez, majority owner of an $8 million construction company I'd have to rescue from the fraud committed by my own uncle. I drove home through Phoenix traffic, the city sprawling in every direction, construction cranes dotting the skyline. Some of those projects probably had Lopez Brothers crews working on them right now, completely unaware that their company was about to undergo a seismic shift. My phone rang as I pulled into my apartment complex. Derek. I stared at the screen, my finger hovering over the answer button. What could I possibly say to him right now? The call went to voicemail. 10 seconds later, a text. Where are you? Uncle Ramon called, really upset. Something about a meeting? Call me. I set the phone down without responding. Derek would find out soon enough. They all would. I made dinner, pasta with jarred sauce, the same meal I'd been making twice a week for years, and sat at my dining table with my laptop. I pulled up the Lopez Brothers website, looking at the portfolio of completed projects, office buildings, shopping centers, municipal facilities. The work was good, the crews were skilled, the clients were happy. That was what I had to remember. Underneath the fraud, underneath Ramon's corruption, there was a real company doing real work. People depended on those paychecks. Clients depended on those projects being completed. The community depended on the infrastructure Lopez Brothers built. This wasn't about revenge. This was about preservation. My phone rang again. Derek again. I let it go to voicemail. Then a text from Mom. Derek says your uncle is very upset. Something about his business. Do you know anything? Call me, please. I turned off my phone. Wednesday morning, I went to work at Henderson and Chasen. Price like normal, though nothing felt normal. Patricia called me into her office at 9 a.m. Richard Ashford emailed me, said the meeting yesterday went as expected. She studied my face. How are you holding up? I confronted my uncle, told him I was buying his company out from under him, and watched him realize his career's over, so, just another Tuesday. Patricia almost smiled. And now? Now we wait for him to accept the offer. Richard thinks he will. His attorney knows he doesn't have a choice. And your family? Derek called 4 times last night. Mom texted. I haven't responded yet. I don't know what to say. The truth, probably, but only when you're ready. Patricia handed me a folder. In the meantime, I've cleared your schedule for the next 2 weeks. You're going to need time to transition, review the Lopez Brothers' operational structure, meet with the management team, prepare for your new role. I'm still employed here for now, right? Until the acquisition closes. Technically, yes, but Grace, we both know you're already gone. Your mind is on Lopez Brothers, as it should be. Take the time to prepare. We'll be fine. I spent the rest of Wednesday reviewing Lopez Brothers' personnel files, organizational charts, and project portfolios. Meridian had compiled comprehensive information on every aspect of the company's operations. I needed to know what I was inheriting. Thursday morning, Richard called. Ramon's attorney contacted us. They're accepting the offer, $6 million for his controlling stake. We'll close in 2 weeks. He agreed? Just like that? After 24 hours of negotiation, yes, he tried to get $7 million, tried to maintain a board seat, tried to keep Derek employed. We said no to everything except the $6 million. His attorney convinced him it was the best deal he'd get. 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, I'd be CEO of Lopez Brothers Development. What do I do now? Come to our offices tomorrow at 10 a.m. We'll start the transition planning. You'll need to meet with Lopez Brothers' senior management team next week, review current projects, understand the financial obligations. It's going to be intensive. That night, I finally called Derek. Grace, where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for 2 days. I know, I'm sorry, I've been busy. Uncle Ramon is selling the company. Did you know that? Some investment firm called Meridian Capital is buying him out. He's devastated. He built that company from nothing, and now he has to sell because of some financial problems. It's not fair. Financial problems. That's what Ramon told him. Not fraud, not theft, financial problems. Derek, we need to talk, but not over the phone. Can you meet me Saturday morning? Coffee shop near campus? I guess, but Grace, this is serious. Uncle Ramon is talking about legal issues, about investigators. I don't understand what's happening, but it's bad. I know it's bad. That's why we need to talk. Saturday, 9 a.m., okay? Okay. I hung up before he could ask more questions. Saturday. I tell Derek everything Saturday. About the fraud, about the acquisition, about my role in all of it. About how his partnership and his future at Lopez Brothers had just evaporated. I looked around my apartment, the cheap furniture, the tiny kitchen, the parking lot view. In a few weeks, I'd be making enough money to move somewhere better. Buy a house maybe, drive a car that didn't have 140,000 miles on it. But first, I had to tell my brother that I'd destroyed his dreams to save our father's legacy. I wasn't sure which was harder, confronting Uncle Ramon or what was coming next with Derek. The coffee shop near ASU campus was crowded with students cramming for finals, the air thick with espresso and anxiety. I arrived at 8:45, ordered a black coffee I wouldn't drink, and claimed a table in the back corner where we could talk without being overheard. Derek walked in at 9 on the dot, still wearing his work clothes, dusty jeans, Lopez Brothers polo shirt, steel-toed boots. He looked tired, older somehow than he had at Sunday dinner 6 days ago. He spotted me and headed over, his expression a mixture of confusion and concern. Grace. He sat down without ordering anything. What's going on? Uncle Ramon has been acting crazy all week. He won't tell me anything except that he's selling the company. My partnership agreement, my future, everything's just gone, and nobody will explain why. I wrapped my hands around my coffee cup, gathering my thoughts. There was no gentle way to do this. Uncle Ramon has been committing fraud for years. Millions of dollars stolen from Lopez Brothers through fake vendors and inflated invoices. Meridian Capital discovered it during their due diligence, and now he's being forced to sell to avoid federal prosecution. Derek stared at me like I'd spoken in a foreign language. What are you talking about? Uncle Ramon built that company. He wouldn't... I have a 73-page forensic report documenting everything. Shell companies, kickback schemes, falsified records, $3.2 million stolen over 4 years. I pulled out a flash drive and set it on the table between us. It's all here if you want to see the evidence. Evidence? Where did you get... He stopped, realization dawning. You. You said you worked at an accounting firm. You did this. I was assigned to analyze Lopez Brothers for Meridian Capital's acquisition team. I found the fraud and reported it. That's my job. Your job? Derek's voice rose, drawing glances from nearby tables. He leaned forward, lowering his voice to a harsh whisper. Your job is to destroy our family's company? To ruin Uncle Ramon? My job is to find the truth. Uncle Ramon ruined himself. He took care of us after Dad died. He paid for my education, gave me a career. He bought out Dad's share of the company for a fraction of what it was worth. He used Mom's grief to steal from her. He paid for your education because you were useful to him, Derek, not because he cared about you. Derek's hands were clenched on the table. You're lying. You've always been jealous of my success, of my relationship with Uncle Ramon. Your success? The words came out sharper than I intended. Derek, your name is on 63 fraudulent documents. You authorized payments to shell companies Ramon controlled. Whether you knew what you were signing or not, you're implicated in federal crimes. The color drained from his face. I didn't know. I believe you. The investigators probably will too. But that doesn't change the fact that you were either incompetent or willfully blind. Either way, your career at Lopez Brothers is over. Over? What are you talking about? Uncle Ramon is selling to Meridian Capital. I'll just work for the new owners. I'm good at my job, Grace. I bring in contracts. I manage crews. Meridian Capital is installing new management. Everyone connected to the fraud is being terminated. That includes you. Derek stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. I don't believe this. I don't believe any of this. Uncle Ramon wouldn't do what you're saying, and even if he did, Meridian wouldn't fire me for something I didn't do. Sit down, Derek. I'm not finished. I don't want to hear any more of your... Sit down. Something in my voice made him obey, sinking back into his chair. There's one more thing you need to know. Meridian Capital isn't just buying Lopez Brothers. They're partnering with an individual investor who's acquiring majority ownership through a leveraged buyout. Derek's eyes narrowed. Who? Me. The silence stretched between us, broken only by the hiss of the espresso machine and the murmur of student conversations around us. You? I'm the majority owner of Summit Ventures LLC, which is acquiring Lopez Brothers Development. Meridian holds 49%. I hold 51%. When the acquisition closes in 2 weeks, I'll be installed as CEO. Derek's face went through a series of expressions: disbelief, comprehension, and finally, pure rage. You're taking the company. You're actually taking Dad's company from the family. I'm saving it from what Uncle Ramon turned it into. By betraying everyone who trusted you? By destroying Uncle Ramon's life? By ending my career? Derek's voice was shaking. How long have you been planning this, Grace? How long have you been working with Meridian to steal everything? I was assigned the case 3 weeks ago. I didn't plan any of this. Bullshit. You've been jealous of me since Dad died. Jealous that Uncle Ramon saw potential in me, that I was successful while you were stuck in your cubicle. So you manufactured this whole fraud story to destroy us and take what's ours. The fraud is real, Derek. I didn't manufacture anything. Then why didn't you come to us first? If you really found something wrong, why didn't you tell Uncle Ramon, give him a chance to explain? Because he's a criminal, Derek. You don't give criminals a heads up before reporting them. He's family! Derek slammed his hand on the table, making my coffee cup jump. Family is supposed to mean something. You're supposed to protect family, not destroy them. I am protecting family. I'm protecting Dad's legacy from the man who corrupted it. Dad's legacy? Dad would be ashamed of you. He'd be sick if he knew what you've become. The words hit harder than I expected, even though I'd been bracing for them. Uncle Ramon said the same thing. You must have practiced together. We don't need to practice. It's just obvious to anyone who knew Dad. He valued loyalty, family, honor. You've thrown all of that away. I stood up, suddenly exhausted. I came here to tell you the truth, to give you a chance to hear it from me instead of through lawyers or news reports. I thought you deserved that much. What I deserve is a sister who would have my back instead of stabbing me in it. Derek, I tried to have your back. For years, I listened to you mock my job, my life, my choices. I let you believe I was just doing data entry because it was easier than dealing with your condescension. I watched you take credit for success built on fraud while Uncle Ramon used you as his signature stamp for criminal activity. I tried to protect you by staying quiet. Protect me? You've destroyed me. Do you have any idea what this does to my reputation? My career? I'm 26 years old, and you just blacklisted me from the only industry I know. You blacklisted yourself when you signed documents without reading them, when you trusted Ramon without asking questions, when you spent 5 years mocking me instead of wondering why your supposedly mediocre sister had a job at one of the most prestigious forensic accounting firms in the state. Derek grabbed his keys off the table. I'm done listening to you justify betraying your family. When Mom finds out what you've done, and she will, don't expect her to forgive you either. You've chosen money over family, Grace. That's something we don't come back from. He walked out, leaving me standing alone at the table with my cold coffee and the flash drive full of evidence he'd refused to look at. I sat back down, my hands trembling. I'd known Derek would be angry. I'd expected accusations and recriminations. But hearing him call me a traitor, hearing him invoke Dad's memory as a weapon, that hurt more than I'd anticipated. My phone buzzed. A text from Richard Ashford. Meeting scheduled Monday 9 a.m. with Lopez Brothers Senior Management. You'll introduce yourself as incoming CEO. Are you ready? Was I ready? I'd just alienated my brother, possibly permanently. My uncle wanted me destroyed. My mother didn't even know yet. And in 2 weeks, I'd be responsible for 200 employees, $40 million in active contracts, and a company reputation I'd have to rebuild from the ground up. I texted back. Ready? That afternoon, I drove to Mom's house. Better to tell her myself than let Derek or Ramon control the narrative. She was in the garden, tending to the roses she'd planted the year after Dad died. Therapy through horticulture, she'd called it. The roses had thrived. "Grace, I wasn't expecting you today." She stood up, brushing dirt from her gardening gloves. "Is everything okay? Derek seemed upset when I talked to him this morning." "Can we go inside? I need to tell you something." We sat at the kitchen table where we'd shared 1,000 meals, 1,000 conversations. Mom made tea the way she always did, fussing with cups and honey, delaying the moment when I'd have to speak. Finally, she sat down across from me. "You're scaring me, Mija. What's wrong?" I told her everything. The forensic investigation, the fraud, Ramon's theft, the acquisition, my role as majority owner and incoming CEO. I laid it all out as clearly and factually as I could, like I was presenting findings to a client instead of confessing to my mother that I'd dismantled her brother-in-law's life. She listened without interrupting, her tea growing cold, her face growing paler. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. "You're sure? About the fraud?" "I have documentation of every transaction, canceled checks, bank records, email trails. It's irrefutable. Ramon has been managing that company for 23 years. He always said business was good, that Miguel would be proud. He was lying, Mama. He stole from his own company, from Dad's legacy." She stood up and walked to the kitchen window, looking out at her garden. "After your father died, Ramon promised me he'd take care of things. He said I didn't need to worry about the business side, that he'd handle everything. I trusted him. I know. When he bought Miguel's share, I thought $200,000 sounded like a lot of money. We paid off the mortgage, put money aside for you and Derek. It seemed generous." She turned to face me. "How much was Miguel's share actually worth?" "At the time, probably $2 million. Maybe more." Mom closed her eyes. "He stole from me too." "Yes." "And Derek? Is he involved in the theft?" "He signed documents he shouldn't have, but I don't think he knew what he was signing. He was careless, not criminal." "But he's losing his job." "Yes. Because of you." The accusation hung in the air. I waited for her to continue, to tell me I'd betrayed the family, that I should have handled this differently, that I'd destroyed Derek's future. Instead, she surprised me. "Your father used to say that building something good is harder than destroying something bad. He said it takes courage to tear down what's broken so you can build something better." She came back to the table, sitting down heavily. "Think Miguel would understand what you're doing, even if it's painful." "Derek doesn't see it that way." "Derek is young and hurt and scared. Give him time." "He said Dad would be ashamed of me." "Derek says a lot of things when he's angry. It's a family trait." She reached across the table, taking my hand. "I won't pretend this doesn't hurt. Ramon was family, whatever he's done. And Derek is my son, and I hate seeing him suffer. But you did the right thing, Grace. You found the truth and you reported it. That takes integrity." "It doesn't feel like integrity. It feels like I destroyed everything." "You destroyed what was rotten so something healthy could grow. That's not the same thing." She squeezed my hand. "Running that company won't be easy. You'll have people who resent you, who think you took what wasn't yours. You'll make mistakes. But your father and I raised you to be strong and smart and honest. Those qualities will serve you well." I felt tears threatening and blinked them back. "I'm scared, Mama. I don't know if I can do this." "Of course you're scared. Anyone with sense would be. But you'll figure it out. And when you do, maybe you can build something your father would recognize. The Lopez brothers he envisioned, not the version Ramon corrupted." We sat together in silence, drinking cold tea, and I felt some of the weight lift from my shoulders. Monday morning arrived too quickly. I dressed in my best suit, a navy blue ensemble I'd bought for professional conferences, and drove to the Lopez brothers' headquarters in Chandler. The building was modest, a single-story structure with the company logo prominent on the facade. The parking lot was full of work trucks, the office buzzing with activity. Richard, Caroline, and Thomas met me in the lobby. "Ready?" Richard asked. No, but let's do it anyway. The conference room held 15 people, the senior management team, project managers, operations supervisors, the head of safety, the chief estimator. They looked wary, uncertain about why they'd been called to this meeting. Ramon wasn't there. He'd been told his presence wasn't required. Richard stood at the head of the table. Thank you all for coming on short notice. I'm Richard Ashford from Meridian Capital. We've recently concluded negotiations to acquire Lopez Brothers Development. The acquisition will close in 10 days, at which point there will be significant operational changes. I could see the anxiety ripple through the room. Acquisitions usually meant layoffs. Let me be clear, Richard continued. We're not here to dismantle this company. We're here to strengthen it. Lopez Brothers has a strong reputation, skilled crews, and excellent client relationships. Our goal is to preserve those strengths while implementing better financial controls and management practices. Caroline took over. Many of you may have heard rumors about financial irregularities. I want to address those directly. Our due diligence uncovered evidence of systematic fraud committed by former ownership. That fraud has been documented and reported to appropriate authorities. Anyone not involved in those activities has nothing to fear from this acquisition. What about Ramon Lopez? The question came from a grizzled man in his 60s, Frank Morrison, the head of field operations. Is he staying on? No, Richard said flatly. Ramon Lopez will have no role in the company going forward, neither will Derek Lopez. Both are implicated in the financial irregularities we discovered. Murmurs spread through the room. These people had worked with Ramon for years. Some probably liked him. Who's going to run the company? Frank asked the question everyone was thinking. Richard gestured to me. I'd like to introduce Grace Lopez. She'll be your new CEO. 15 pairs of eyes turned to me. I saw skepticism, surprise, and in a few faces, outright hostility. I stood up, my heart pounding. Good morning. I know this is a shock. I'm 30 years old. I've never worked in construction, and I'm taking over a company most of you have been building for decades. If I were you, I'd be skeptical too. A few grudging nods. At least they appreciated honesty. What I can tell you is this. My father, Miguel Lopez, was one of the founders of this company. I grew up hearing about job sites, about the pride he took in building things that lasted. When he died in 2003, I thought that legacy died with him, but it didn't. You kept it alive. The work you do, the quality you deliver, that's my father's legacy. That's what I want to preserve. Frank leaned back in his chair. Preserving it is nice. Running it is different. You know anything about construction management, about bidding jobs, managing crews, dealing with building inspectors? No, I'm a forensic accountant. I know numbers, contracts, and financial systems. I don't know how to pour concrete or operate a crane. I met his eyes. Which is why I'm not going to pretend I do. I'll need your expertise, all of you. I'll need Frank to keep teaching crews what good work looks like. I'll need Beth to keep estimating jobs accurately. I looked at each person in turn. I'll need every person in this room to keep doing what you're good at while I handle the parts I'm good at. Financial controls, contract compliance, strategic planning. And if we don't want to work for someone who got her job by ratting out her own uncle? The question came from a younger man, late 30s, expensive watch, perfectly styled hair. Jeffrey Vance, one of the project managers, Derek's friend. Then you're free to find employment elsewhere. I won't keep anyone who doesn't want to be here. I kept my voice level. But let me be clear about something. I didn't rat out my uncle. I documented fraud that was harming this company and everyone in it. Ramon Lopez was stealing from you, from your jobs, your benefits, your future. I stopped him. If that makes me a traitor in your eyes, that's your choice to make. Jeffrey glared but didn't respond. Richard stood up again. We'll be conducting individual meetings with each of you over the next week to discuss your roles going forward. We are not planning mass layoffs. We need experienced people to keep this operation running. But we will terminate anyone we find was involved in the fraud. If you have concerns or questions, my team and I will be available. The meeting broke up with people filing out in clusters, talking in low voices. Some looked at me with curiosity, others with clear distrust. Frank Morrison lingered as others left. Miguel was a good man, fair, honest, worked harder than anyone on the crew. He studied me carefully. You really his daughter? Yes, sir. You've got his eyes. Same determination. He extended his hand. I'll give you a chance, Ms. Lopez, but you've got to earn it. This isn't a business you can run from behind a desk. I shook his hand. I'm counting on people like you to teach me. We'll see. He walked out, leaving me alone with the Meridian team. Thomas whistled low. That was intense. Jeffrey Vance is going to be a problem. Already planning to terminate him, Caroline said, consulting her notes. His expense reports show irregularities. He's either sloppy or complicit. Sloppy, I said. He's Derek's friend, probably signed things without checking, same as Derek did. Still grounds for termination. We can't afford sloppy in the new organization. I looked around the conference room, the worn table, the whiteboard covered with project schedules, the walls lined with photos of completed buildings. This was it. This was my company now. Or it would be in 10 days, and I had 10 days to figure out how to run it without destroying everything my father built. The acquisition closed on May 18th, 2016, in a law office conference room with enough signatures to fill a phone book. By noon, Summit Ventures LLC owned 98% of Lopez Brothers Development. By 1 p.m., I was officially CEO. By 3 p.m., I was wondering what the hell I'd gotten myself into. Your first crisis, Caroline, sliding a folder across my new desk. Ramon's old desk, in Ramon's old office, which was now my office. The Westgate Shopping Plaza project. The client is threatening to pull out because they heard about the ownership change and they're nervous. I opened the folder. Westgate was a $12 million project, Lopez Brothers' largest active contract. Losing it would be catastrophic. Who's the client contact? Sharon Brenner, VP of Development at Westgate Properties. She's already called twice today wanting reassurances. Set up a meeting for tomorrow morning. I'll handle it. Caroline raised an eyebrow. You've been CEO for 3 hours. Then I'd better start learning fast. The next 2 weeks were a crash course in construction management delivered at emergency speed. I spent mornings on job sites with Frank Morrison, learning to read blueprints and understand crew dynamics. Afternoons were contract reviews and client meetings. Evenings were financial analysis and strategic planning. Sharon Brenner was the first of many nervous clients. I met her at the Westgate job site, hard hat and safety vest over my business suit, looking like a child playing dress-up. Ms. Lopez. Sharon's handshake was firm, her expression skeptical. Your company is in the middle of significant upheaval. Give me one reason why I shouldn't terminate this contract and find a more stable partner. Because Lopez Brothers has the best safety record, the highest quality ratings, and the most experienced crews in the valley. None of that changed with the ownership transition. Your uncle ran this company for 23 years. You've run it for 2 days. My uncle ran it into the ground with criminal fraud. I'm running it with proper financial controls and legitimate business practices. Which would you prefer? Sharon blinked, clearly not expecting such directness. The media is reporting that Ramon Lopez is under federal investigation. He is, for crimes committed against Lopez Brothers, not for Lopez Brothers. The company is the victim here, Ms. Brenner, not the perpetrator. We're cleaning house and moving forward with a management team focused on integrity and excellence. And you think you can deliver on a $12 million project with zero construction experience? No, I think Frank Morrison can. I gestured to where Frank stood conferring with the site supervisor. He's been managing crews for 37 years. I think Beth Castellano can deliver accurate estimates because she's been doing it for 15 years. I think our structural engineers and project managers can execute this work because they've been doing it successfully for decades. I don't need to know how to pour concrete. I need to know how to let expert people do their jobs without financial fraud undermining their work. Sharon studied me for a long moment. You're remarkably honest for a CEO. It's all I know how to be. She walked over to inspect the foundation work, talking quietly with Frank. I waited, trying not to look as nervous as I felt. Losing Westgate would start a domino effect. Other clients would panic. More contracts would be canceled. The company would spiral. Finally, Sharon came back. Frank speaks highly of you. Says you've been on every major job site for the past week, asking smart questions and staying out of the way. That's worth something. So we're good? We're good. But I want weekly progress reports, not from project managers. From you. I want to know you're paying attention. You'll have them every Monday morning. Crisis 1 survived. There were others. A bonding company threatened to drop Lopez Brothers until I provided them with detailed financial documentation proving the fraud had been eliminated. A bank tried to call in a line of credit until Thomas Brennan from Meridian personally vouched for our financial stability. 2 project managers quit, uncomfortable working for someone they viewed as a traitor. I replaced them with better people. Jeffrey Vance, Derek's friend, was terminated after the audit revealed he'd been falsifying overtime records. He threatened to sue for wrongful termination until our lawyers showed him the evidence. He left quietly. By June, the company was stabilizing. Projects were progressing on schedule. Clients were cautiously optimistic. The crew was starting to accept that I wasn't going anywhere. Derek, however, was everywhere. He'd been calling me weekly since the acquisition closed. Angry, desperate, pleading calls that I mostly let go to voicemail. He'd filed an appeal with Meridian trying to get his job back. It was denied. He'd threatened to sue for wrongful termination. His lawyer advised him he had no case. Finally, 3 months after the acquisition, he requested a formal meeting with the board of directors. He wants to pitch himself for reinstatement, Richard told me. Claims he's the victim of guilt by association, that he was manipulated by Ramon, and that his experience and client relationships make him valuable to the company. What's he really after? His identity, his career, his belief that he deserves to run Lopez Brothers because of his name and his history. Richard leaned back in his chair. The board meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, July 19th. He doesn't know you'll be there. He doesn't know I'm on the board? He knows there's a new board. He's been told the membership is confidential, pending the company's legal reorganization. He's assuming it's Meridian executives and maybe some holdovers from Ramon's era. Richard smiled slightly. He's in for a surprise. Tuesday morning, I arrived at the Meridian Capital offices an hour early to review the agenda with Richard, Caroline, and our 2 independent board members, Margaret Chen, a retired construction executive, and William Rodriguez, a corporate attorney specializing in business restructuring. Derek's petition is 3rd on the agenda, Margaret said, reviewing her notes. After quarterly financial review and the Westgate project update, he'll have 15 minutes to make his case. What's our response? We listen politely and deny the petition unanimously, William said. He has no legal standing, no unique value proposition, and his presence would undermine the company's fresh start. It's a straightforward decision. Then why do I feel like it's anything but straightforward? Caroline put a hand on my shoulder. Because he's your brother, and this is going to hurt, but that doesn't make it the wrong decision. The board meeting started at 9 a.m. sharp. Richard called it to order, running through the quarterly financials first. Revenue was up 8% compared to the same quarter under Ramon's management. Actual revenue, not fraudulent numbers. Profit margins had improved significantly now that money wasn't being siphoned off to shell companies. These results are remarkable given the upheaval, Margaret said. Grace, you've done exceptional work stabilizing the operation. Thank you, but the credit belongs to the management team. I'm just making sure they have the resources and support they need. We moved through the Westgate update. On schedule, on budget, client satisfied. Then Richard checked his watch. Our final agenda item. Derek Lopez has petitioned for reinstatement as an employee of Lopez Brothers Development. He's waiting in the conference room. Shall we hear his presentation? Everyone nodded. Richard made a call to his assistant. Please bring in Mr. Lopez. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. The door opened. Derek walked in wearing a sharp suit, his hair perfectly styled, carrying a leather portfolio. He looked confident, prepared, ready to make his case to people he expected would be sympathetic. Then he saw me. The confidence evaporated. His step faltered. He looked from me to Richard to the other board members, comprehension and horror dawning simultaneously. Grace? Hello, Derek. Please have a seat. I gestured to the empty chair at the end of the table. He remained standing, frozen. What are you doing here? I'm chairman of the board. This is my company's board meeting. Your company? He looked at Richard. I was told I'd be presenting to the board of directors. You said the membership was confidential. It is confidential, until you're in the room. Richard's tone was professionally neutral. You now know the membership. Grace Lopez, chairman and CEO, Caroline Fletcher and myself representing Meridian Capital, Margaret Chen and William Rodriguez as independent directors. We constitute the full board. Derek's hands clenched around his portfolio. This is a setup. You brought me here to humiliate me. No, I said quietly. You requested a formal hearing before the board. We're giving you exactly what you asked for. Please, sit down, Derek. He sat, but his jaw was tight with barely contained rage. You have 15 minutes to present your case for reinstatement, Richard said. The floor is yours. Derek opened his portfolio with shaking hands. He'd prepared slides, talking points, references. I could see the hours of work he'd put into this presentation. I've worked for Lopez Brothers for 5 years, he began, his voice carefully controlled. During that time, I've brought in $17 million in new contracts. I've managed 12 major projects to successful completion. I have relationships with every major client and every key vendor in the valley. My reputation in the industry is excellent. Margaret was taking notes. William watched impassively. Caroline and Richard had carefully neutral expressions. I focused on keeping my face blank, professional. I acknowledged that I made mistakes. I signed documents I should have reviewed more carefully. I trusted Ramon Lopez when I should have asked more questions. Those were errors in judgment, not malicious actions. He looked directly at me. I was 24 years old when I started at Lopez Brothers. I was learning, following the example set by the man I thought was my mentor. I didn't know he was using me to cover his crimes. Your point being, William asked. My point is that I'm a victim of Ramon Lopez's fraud, not a perpetrator. I was terminated for unknowing participation in activities I would never have knowingly supported. That's unjust. I'm asking the board to recognize that injustice and reinstate me to a position commensurate with my experience and value. What position did you have in mind? Margaret asked. Derek hesitated. I was a project manager before, but given my experience and my family connection to the company, I believe I should be considered for senior management, vice president of operations, perhaps. So you're requesting promotion, not just reinstatement, Caroline clarified. I'm requesting recognition of my value to this organization. Lopez Brothers was built by my father and uncle. I'm the only remaining Lopez with construction experience. There's symbolic importance to having family leadership. There is family leadership, I said. Me. Derek's eyes flashed. You're an accountant playing CEO. I'm an actual construction professional. If this board cared about what's best for Lopez Brothers, they'd recognize the difference. What's best for Lopez Brothers is leadership that prioritizes integrity over nepotism, Richard said. Your family name doesn't entitle you to a position. Neither does hers. She got this job by manipulating. Careful? William's voice was sharp. You're addressing the chairman of the board. I'd suggest you maintain professional courtesy. Derek took a deep breath, visibly trying to compose himself. I apologize. I'm just asking for a fair chance, a fresh start under new management. I'm a good project manager. I can contribute to this company's success. You already had a fresh start, I said. 5 years ago, when Uncle Ramon gave you a job straight out of college. You had opportunities I never had. You had mentorship, connections, a clear path to leadership, and you squandered it by being careless, by not asking questions, by valuing your relationship with Ramon over your responsibility to the company. I was 24. You're 26 now, still making the same mistakes, coming here expecting to be handed a position based on your name rather than earning it based on your merit. Merit? Derek's composure cracked. You're lecturing me about merit? You got this position by destroying our family. You turned in your own uncle, ended my career, and took over a company you know nothing about running. That's not merit. That's betrayal. The room went silent. Margaret stopped taking notes. William leaned forward. Mr. Lopez, Margaret said carefully, I'm a retired construction executive. I spent 40 years in this industry. I've seen companies destroyed by fraud, good people hurt by corrupt leadership. Your sister uncovered criminal activity and reported it. That's not betrayal. That's integrity. I've reviewed the forensic report, William added. Ramon Lopez stole millions of dollars from a company that bore your father's name. If anyone betrayed your family, it was him. Grace tried to save what he'd corrupted. Derek looked around the table, seeing no sympathy in any face. So that's it? You're all just going to side with her? No matter what I say, no matter how qualified I am? This isn't about sides, Richard said. It's about business judgment. You've demonstrated poor judgment, lack of oversight, and an inability to take responsibility for your mistakes. Those aren't qualities we want in our management team. The board votes on your petition now. All in favor of reinstatement? Silence. All opposed? 5 hands rose, mine included. The petition is denied unanimously. Mr. Lopez, you're free to go. Derek stood slowly, gathering his portfolio. He looked at each board member in turn, then finally at me. You've won, Grace. You got everything you wanted, the company, the power, the satisfaction of proving you were better than me. I hope it was worth it. It wasn't about winning, Derek. Then what was it about? Doing the right thing, even when it hurt. He walked out without responding, the door closing behind him with a quiet click. The board meeting continued. New business, strategic planning, upcoming projects. But my mind was only half present. The other half was watching my brother walk out of that room, possibly out of my life permanently. After the meeting, I returned to my office at Lopez Brothers headquarters. The space still didn't feel quite like mine. Ramon's furniture, Ramon's awards on the walls, Ramon's ghost in every corner. I'd been meaning to redecorate, make it my own, but there never seemed to be time. Frank Morrison knocked on my doorframe. Got a minute? Always. What's up? He came in, closing the door behind him. Word's gotten around about your brother's board meeting. The crew's talking. What are they saying? Mixed reactions. Some think you were too harsh. Others think you handled it right. He sat down across from my desk. I'm in the second camp for what it's worth. Thanks, Frank. Your father and I worked together for 12 years. He was a good man, but he had a blind spot when it came to Ramon. Trusted him completely. Never saw the corruption coming. Frank's weathered face was thoughtful. Miguel would have been crushed if he'd lived to see what Ramon did to the company, but I think he'd be proud of you for fixing it. Even though it meant destroying his brother and his son's career, especially because of that, it takes courage to do the hard right thing instead of the easy wrong thing. He stood up. You're doing good work, Ms. Lopez. Don't let family guilt make you doubt that. After Frank left, I sat at my desk looking at the photos on the wall. Construction projects spanning 3 decades, ribbon cuttings, completed buildings, teams of workers covered in concrete dust and honest sweat. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Derek told me about the board meeting. He's very hurt, but he'll survive. So will you. Dinner Sunday? I texted back. Yes, thank you. 6 months after taking over as CEO, Lopez Brothers Development was thriving. Revenue was up 22% year over year. We'd won bids on 3 major projects that would have been impossible under Ramon's mismanagement. The crew had stopped seeing me as an interloper and started seeing me as someone who genuinely cared about building the company Dad envisioned. Derek never called again. Mom said he'd taken a project management job with a smaller firm in Tucson, starting over in a city where nobody knew his history. Maybe that was what he needed: distance, anonymity, a chance to prove himself without the Lopez name weighing him down. Uncle Ramon pleaded guilty to multiple counts of fraud in October. He got 6 years in federal prison and was ordered to pay restitution. I attended the sentencing hearing, but didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. One Saturday afternoon in November, I was working late at the office when security called up. "Ms. Lopez, there's someone here to see you. Says he's family." For a wild moment, I thought it might be Derek, finally ready to talk, to move past the anger. But it wasn't Derek in the lobby. It was a man in his mid-50s, thin and weathered, wearing work clothes and carrying a hard hat. "Can I help you?" I asked. "You're Grace Lopez, Miguel's daughter?" "Yes." He extended his hand. "Tom Reyes. I worked on your father's crew back in the 90s. Best foreman I ever had. I'm sorry for your loss. I know it's been years, but I still think about Miguel sometimes." "Thank you. Did you need something?" "Actually, yeah. I'm starting my own small construction company. Residential work, mostly. I heard you were running Lopez Brothers now, heard you were doing it right. I was wondering if you might have some advice for a guy starting out." I smiled. "Let me buy you a coffee, and we can talk." We sat in the conference room for 2 hours. I told him about licensing requirements, bonding, insurance, vendor relationships. I shared the mistakes I'd made and the lessons I'd learned. When he left, he looked hopeful, like maybe he could actually build something good. After he left, I walked through the empty office. My office now, my company now, my responsibility to honor what Dad started and what I'd fought to preserve. On the wall, I'd hung a photo of Dad at a job site, hard hat pushed back on his head, concrete dust on his clothes, grinning at the camera with the satisfaction of someone who'd built something real. Next to it, I'd hung a photo from my first completed project as CEO, the Westgate Shopping Plaza grand opening. I was standing with Frank Morrison and the crew, hard hat and safety vest over my suit, smiling with the same satisfaction Dad had in his photo. Different generations, different challenges, same pride in building something that lasts. My phone buzzed. A text from Richard Ashford. "Board meeting next week. Quarterly results are exceptional. Well done, Grace." I looked at Dad's photo one more time, then turned off the lights and headed home. Lopez Brothers' development was going to be fine, and so was I. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.